If I tell you that Brazil once had a real supercar, would you believe it? This is not a joke, not an exaggeration, and definitely not one of those homemade cars built just to show off on social media. No, I am talking about a car that actually existed, was released, ran on the streets, and had performance strong enough to make a lot of European sports cars nervous. A car that looked like a mini Ferrari, accelerated like a lightweight Porsche, and had the soul of a Lotus Elise. And the craziest part is that almost nobody talks about it. So today we are diving into the story of the Lamborghini H1, the Brazilian supercar that could have placed the country on a completely different level in the automotive world, but ended up disappearing as if it had never existed. The story begins at the end of the 90s, when two Brazilian engineers looked at the country's automotive scene and basically thought something like, why can't Brazil have a real sports car? And that idea was not just the dream of an enthusiast. These guys had knowledge, vision, and the determination to create something that could compete with European sports cars without copying anyone. They wanted something that was Brazilian from start to finish, with its own style and personality. That is how the Lamborghini H1 project was born, a car that would be completely handcrafted, lightweight, powerful, and made to deliver the kind of experience you only get from a true, pure sports machine. The kind of car that is not built to please the masses, but to excite people who truly love driving. And here comes the crazy part of this story. When you look at the Lamborghini H1, it almost seems like something taken straight from a video game. The body had an aggressive design, a truly sporty look, with a low nose, integrated headlights, a short rear, and proportions that resembled Italian cars. It is not an exaggeration to say that from certain angles it looked like a modern interpretation of a Ferrari Dino. And from the side, it had a vibe similar to a Lotus Elise, but with its own personality. Nothing about it was generic. It was a car designed to be different. And that difference became even clearer when you put it on a track. The chassis was so light and so stiff that even with a relatively small engine, the car delivered performance that left many imported sports cars struggling to keep up. And since I mentioned the engine, let's get into that. The Lamborghini H1 used a 1.8 turbo engine from Audi, the same family used in the A3, which everyone knows is strong, reliable, and full of potential. It produced about 180 horsepower, which may sound small today, but when you combine that with a car weighing just over 900 kilos, it becomes explosive. It was like putting a hot hatch engine into a giant go-kart. The car could go from 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds depending on the version, and it easily passed 120 miles per hour. And all of that without electronic assists. It was steering wheel, pedals, gearbox, and you. Driving the H1 meant feeling absolutely everything happening underneath you, because the car responded in a direct and almost brutal way. Anyone who enjoys pure driving knows exactly what that means. But every great car has a hidden tragedy, and in the case of the Lamborghini H1, the tragedy was never the car itself. It was the country. Production was handcrafted, which already made everything more expensive. Add Brazil's absurd taxes on top of that, and you ended up with a car that, despite being national, cost more than imported sports cars from famous brands. That alone complicated things. Another problem was that the Brazilian market simply did not understand the car's purpose. Here, when someone pays a high price for a car, they want status, brand recognition, luxury, and prestige. And the Lamborghini was the opposite of that. It was a pure sports car made for people who love performance, not for people who want to show off. Because of that, sales were low, the creators faced financial difficulties, and the car never reached the production level it deserved. Then comes another chapter. After some time, the project was purchased by Brax, a company that tried to revive the Lamborghini and take it to a new level. They invested money, refined certain details, updated components, improved the interior, and reintroduced the car with hopes of success. But once again, Brazil was still the same. There was little support for national automotive development, taxes remained high, and the market still had no maturity to understand what that car represented. The result is that the revival attempt failed. And the Lamborghini H1, the Brazilian supercar that had everything to become an icon, ended up surviving only in the memory of those who lived through that era or people deeply connected to the national automotive scene. And here is my opinion. The Lamborghini H1 is one of the greatest proofs that Brazil has the ability to create amazing cars. The problem is not talent. The problem is not engineering. The problem is not creativity. What Brazil lacks is the environment, the support, and the vision to make these projects thrive. If this car had been born in Germany, Japan, or the United States, it would be remembered today as one of those cult sports cars that shaped an era and influenced a generation. But because it was born in Brazil, it stayed hidden. It became rare. It became legend. And it is sad to think that many people proudly talk about foreign sports cars but do not even know that Brazil once built something on this level. And this is why telling the story of the Lamborghini H1 matters so much. Because it is not just a car. It is a symbol of what the Brazilian automotive industry could have become if conditions were different. It represents a project built with passion, courage, and stubbornness. A car that proved, even for a short time, that Brazil can build a supercar. And with the right support, it could have stood among the greatest. The Lamborghini H1 is the kind of car that makes you feel both pride and frustration. Pride for what it was. Frustration for what it could have been. And if you enjoy this type of content about the history, technology, and curiosities of the automotive world, follow the Hidden Speed channel so you do not miss the next videos. Here, the passion for cars goes far beyond the steering wheel.